Hi, I'm Ben with Teleport. I'm going to walk you through our Getting Started guide. This Getting Started guide is going to teach you all the fundamentals of setting up Teleport. On our documentation here, it will be embedded here, but you might have also found this on YouTube. Since Teleport 6, a lot has changed and a lot has also become simplified. And I'm going to walk you through all the steps for one Linux host. I'll go through the prerequisites in a bit, but let me just show you an architecture diagram of what we're going to set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to create one EC2 host, which is going to be our auth, node, and proxy. And I'll sort of talk through what that means as we go through this. And we're going to connect to one node, which we're going to add to the cluster. To get started, you need to have a sort of AWS account, a domain name, and the ability to change DNS. For our DNS records, I have a domain name already in my AWS account. I'm going to set 2 entries. We're going to use Let's Encrypt to get our certificates. You don't need to do anything else. Teleport does this on your behalf. And also, since Teleport 6, there's a few additions to Teleport. We've broadened our database support and also our desktop support. We're not going to cover them in our video. We actually have dedicated videos for getting started with those protocols, but you could connect them afterwards. So I'd recommend if you want to go deep into, let's say, desktops or databases, start on one of those guides, but this is sort of a great introduction. Like I mentioned, we'll need a Linux machine. We'll only require port 443 to be open since the proxy will be publicly available. You'll need a 2-factor app. I'm going to be using Google Authenticator. We're going to require an OpenSSH client. This is just for the initial configuration. You would likely automate a lot of this, probably put it into a sort of AMI image or use Terraform. But sort of just to get our hands dirty, we're going to go sort of straight the old school ClickOps way. And like I said, we need DNS and Route 53. There's just the sidebar here. If you want to set this up on your local machine without all of this, we have a Docker Compose guide here, which I'd recommend checking out. So to get started, I'm going to just launch an instance. In my case, I'm just going to be picking the smallest instance. This is just for my demo. We do have some guidelines, making sure it's on one of my my default VPC. And make sure it's in one of my subnets. Everything's pretty standard. Just going to pick the standard disk size. And then for security group, SSH, this is going to be for my initial configuration. So I'm going to set this to my IP. And I'm going to set a HTTPS rule to 443. And this is going to be available to anywhere. And then I'm going to launch this instance. I've already uploaded a public-private key pair, which I'm going to use for my OpenSSH client. So I'm going to launch this instance. As this launches, let's come back to our docs. So first up, we need to install Teleport on the Linux host. We have a range of options here. I picked a AWS Linux instance, which is sort of a RHEL derivative. We have instructions here, so let's just give this a name. Okay, now my host is running. I am going to connect to it. So there's instructions here. We're going to be using OpenSSH client to configure this. This example, most cases, it sort of guesses it. EC2 uses the default one for AWS 2 AMIs, but let's try it. Bring my terminal down. Okay, so let's just run a quick update. Okay, everything's sort of up to date, so we should be good to go to the next step. So we're going to add the repo, and then sudo yum install teleport. And by doing it through the package, Teleport will also install the systemd unit, which we recommend for running the service. So we're going to just approve the GPT key. Okay, and then we go Teleport version. It has been installed. So this is pretty easy. We have some security tips here about creating when to create a user or a non-user. We're going to do most things as sort of a root user in this example. So you'd probably want to come back and review your hardening capabilities. But that's sort of for sort of day 2. We're just trying to get started and sort of do a quick demo. Next thing, we need to configure DNS. And for DNS, like I said, we're going to have it on a subdomain. And I have a URL called teleport-example. And so where you see this being tele.example.com, I'll sort of walk you through this here. So let's go to Route 53. We do have instructions here for the cloud providers if you're using the command line, but I'm just going to go through the sort of the ClickOps way. So I already have my hosted zone. I'm going to create a new record, and I'm going to do teleport-9.teleport.demo. And in my case, you come back to the host. I'm going to just create a CNAME record. To my host here, increase the size of this. Okay, so this is the public IPv4 DNS record. And I'm also going to create another record. And this record is used for application access for routing. And that's going to be star dot. And this means any application that we add, let's say Jenkins or like Metabase, or your custom app would be like jenkins.teleport-9.teleport-demo, whatever your domain name is. And then you just point it exactly to the same CNAME. By the way, we also have examples in our teleport repo of using a Terraform and CloudFormation template, which will configure like application load balancers, which would be the way in which you want to sort of productionize teleport. So let's run this. So let's see if we can connect. So we have this dig to make sure it's propagated. And it looks like it has propagated. So next up, we configure teleport. So to configure teleport, we have this sort of useful command teleport configure, and this will create the required information about the TLS certificates and the private key. We recommend using Let's Encrypt. If you want to use your own sort of private deployment, we have instructions on how you can upload your own certificate. And so let's just get this command here and add it to my notepad. And you can see here, there's a few things that we need to configure. So we're going to do teleport configure Acme, which is going to get our TLS certificates, my email address, the cluster name. This is important, and this actually has to exactly match the top level domain name that you're having. So in my case, it is teleport demo dot teleport-9.teleport-demo.com. And then we write it out to etc YAML. So let's come back to my terminal. Okay, the problem is teleport hasn't been installed for the sudo user and it can't write out. So if we just do teleport configure, we have this configuration file here now. And this is just sort of outputted it locally. And then I'm going to maybe resize this window. And then I'm just going to create it manually. I will update the documentation for AWS to show you the one-liner, so the sudo user has the ability to look at the installed file, but let's just keep rocking along. And so I'm writing it to etc teleport.yaml, which is the place in which it expects it. It's a relatively simple configuration file. This will work out of the box. This is our standard data directory. This is just the node name of the host, standard debugging. We have the auth service. We're using multiplex, which is a new addition in later Teleport 8. And this meant that we only opened port 443. You didn't have to open other ports. And we also added the ability to SSH into this box. Then we added our proxy service, where it's listening, and then saying Acme yes to get our certificates. Okay, so now let's go back here. And now we can just start teleport. So I started it with system cuddle. We check system cuddle status. It looks like it's running. So now let's check out the URL. So on first load, it might take a little bit. It's like finding the certificates. And you see here, we're welcomed by this page. It says sign into Teleport, but we don't have a username and login yet. So we're going to do this next. And we do that using tcuddle, which we're going to be doing on the machine again. So I'm creating a Teleport admin user with some roles. These are built in, editor and access. And then I have logins. These are sort of the principles that you would, let's say, like SSH into the box. So EC2 user or root or Ubuntu. Okay, we're having the sudo issue, so I'm just gonna... Okay, looks like we will need to fix it in this case. So let me get this one-liner and I'll show you what that is. Okay, I have found it. So actually in our Packer script, make sure to add this to our documentation, but you need to add user bin local path to sudo to sort of make tcuddle sudo users work. So let's just do this now. Okay, so now it worked. So we have the user teleport admin has been created, but requires a password. Let's go to this URL and configure this. So we go get started. And then we have to scan this QR code. Okay, so we're in. Teleport is working. This is actually the host, which is the host running the auth server, the proxy, and teleport. So this is kind of what I said by this combination. But we only have one currently. We don't have any applications or Kubernetes servers or databases, but we will have instructions here on how to configure and set them up. And we have some of our roles, access, auditor, and editor. Obviously, I only have one user. This is the community edition. So GitHub is our one identity provider. And you can see we don't have any audit activity apart from the initial setup. So let's see what's next. This is a little information on the OS user mapping. Our next step is to install Teleport locally. So in my case, like we've been using this machine, but this is remote. Like this is our remote EC2 user, and this is my local machine. I already have Teleport installed, or TSH, I must say. And I think our next step is to TSH into the server. So let's show that. So we're going to start with TSH login, and then we pick the proxy, which is the domain name of the machine we set up, .com, and then user is teleport admin. I'm adding the password, and it's going to add me for my my software token. And you see here, I'm logged in and I have a certificate of access for 12 hours. And this is sort of one of the core things behind Teleport is in the background, it creates, it uses like short-lived certificates. And so after 12 hours, I'll need to re-authenticate again, but I can sort of go about my day, or your teammates can for those 12 hours, get the access that they need to have been defined. And then after those 12 hours, their session has expired. So greatly reducing, let's say, the blast radius of someone's credentials was to be compromised. Okay, so we have fun. Let's SSH into a node. So let's do ls to see the nodes. And there's a few options here. You can use the node name or the address, but you can also pick labels. So I can do ec2 user at env.example. And then this is, like I said, the machine which we've been configuring. So if I exit, it has stopped. Then if we actually come back into the Teleport audit log, you can see that we started a session, Teleport admin, session has ended, and then we have a full session recording here. It's sort of a playback that you can see exactly what happened. Okay, so next up, we're going to add a node to the cluster. So let's create a new node. For security groups, we're going to just add SSH for the moment. It doesn't need any other public access. Use my same key pair as earlier. And then let's just give this a name. Okay, so let's go to the node. When bootstrapping a node, there's a few options here. The same process. You install Teleport and then you start Teleport. You can use tcuddle tokens add on the main root server, or there's a few other options in Teleport 9 that's sort of available to you. So I'm going to show you a new option which has been added to our community edition. Is we have this script that you can install and run on the server, and it will set up and configure it for you. But if you also want to use our sort of short-lived tokens, we have instructions here. But let's try this one. So let's connect. Okay, so we're on the host. And let's just copy this. And what this is going to do is it's going to detect the operating system. It's going to check the CA pin, create a join token for us, automatically install and set up the packages, set up the system D unit. And it has been started. And it sort of shows you what the IP address, the node name is. So if we come back into here, you can see we now have two hosts. This is the one that we've just added. And since it's an EC2 host, we just click the EC2 user. And we're like in the box. We have next up adding an application to Teleport. I'm going to skip over this one. We have like another dedicated video, which I'd recommend checking out. And yeah, this kind of brings me to the end. At this stage, I would probably experiment with sort of ways in which you want to think about adding tokens and service to your clusters, also possibly adding more teammates. You can add your teammates individually by creating individual users, but I would really recommend using our GitHub connector, since it makes it easy to people take their identity as they sort of come and go throughout your project. You don't have to worry too much about it. And you see here, you map your org to logins, and then these logins are roles within Teleport. And probably the next thing I'll look at is sort of how you can tweak roles and sort of set permissions. This Teleport admin is sort of the super admin. You might want to really limit only to certain labels or certain principles for logging access. But if you have any questions, I would recommend joining us in our Slack room. If you come here, we have a link here. We're more than happy to help. Let me know how you get on, and thanks for watching.